Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. It's today's on Halloween, but it looks like everybody's celebrating Halloween today, except for us. We should have been wearing costumes. Hi, I'm Ernie Graham, CEO of HomeBot, and I've got two friends and esteemed professionals in our space today. Nicole Ruth, branch manager at Movement Mortgage. Nicole, thank you for joining today. I've known Nicole for a very long time. For those of you who don't know Nicole, she has been a top producer. She's also an investor. She knows her stuff. Nicole, welcome to the
Thank you so much
podcast
for
today.
having me. I'm excited.
Good stuff. Now we also have Andy Taylor. Andy and I met a very long time ago. Andy had a company called Approved, sold it to Credit Karma, worked at Redfin, and he's got a new company now called Retro Rate. Andy, I saw you present at the what was the conference a couple of
The,
weeks
the
ago?
digital mortgage conference.
Digital Mortgage
Yeah.
Conference, and I was just like everybody in the room was had their ears pinned back with your new startup called Retro Rate. Welcome, Andy. Thanks
Thanks
for
for
being
having me.
here.
Yeah, Ernie, always a pleasure.
We did prep yesterday for this webinar, and it's like I really wish we were talking about this. We should have just hit record on that thing, but because Andy and Nicole. It's like they're come from different ends of the spectrum, different perspectives, and they're just so experienced and have so much insight. So we're going to have some fun with it today and dig into some of these topics: reinventing home search, how to win clients in the era of privacy, and beat the big dogs. So let's get started. Let's lean into this. So let's start out, and I'm going to kind of set the context here, you guys. And I know you guys, Andy, Nicole, have lots of perspective on these things. But I guess this first slide, and we're not going to do a bunch of slideware today, but I just kind of want to set the stage as what's the point? Why are we here? What's happening in market that would even cause us to talk about search or talk about using a strategy? What are the things that are going on in market? And we talked about a little bit about these the other day, but let's start with Redfin Rocket. Um, I'll just kick it off by saying, we've all seen the headlines. Um, I think that Redfin Rocket, Redfin Rocket Cooper really got a lot of my phone continues to ring on this saying, what are we doing about it? But I'm curious to get both of your all's take on Redfin Rocket. I know it's been talked about a lot, but just as a setup here is one of the things that's happening in market. I'll start with you, Andy. What do you think it means? And why should we still care now that we're sort of past the headline stage of the Redfin Rocket announcement and merger?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Redfin and Rocket's like the first thing item on this list, but literally every single one of these things has one common theme, and that's of consolidation. That's of these big, massive behemoths that are now being created that are changing the dynamics of the people in the space. So Redfin and Rocket, well, I mean, Redfin is effectively a legion beast that is going to drive a lot of business for Rocket Mortgage. And once they're in Rocket Mortgage and they have closed on their home, then it's going to be a part of their servicing portfolio. And so it's creating like this very large kind of like situation where lots of people are going to be in their funnel, and lots of people are going to stay in their funnel. Um, Trigger lead bands, you're seeing that all over the face. That is effectively like a group of people that are saying, you know what? We don't want other people to have like insight into our customers. We want like first bite at the apple, again, because we're big. And if you look at like who sponsored those types of things, you get a lot of sort of push on, well, it's the people who have the biggest servicing portfolios. So that's
And
also,
it's really interesting because in our last webinar, I think that was something that a lot of people didn't even understand is that
yeah,
it's a trigger lead ban, but it's actually not a
it's not a
ban.
ban. No, no,
It's a
no, no.
ban on, all of the individual illos on the street, but the servicers and the banks still get to use trigger leads. So I love the observation insofar that it's like it's big, it's consolidation, big getting bigger,
It's
right?
it's an anti-competitive, I don't have to compete with others. I only have to compete against myself for
Right.
leads. we can continue down like that, but because I know you only asked about the riff and rocket, but like that is a common theme across all of these points is one of consolidation and one of like, a changing in the dynamics, largely favoring larger players.
Yep. And Nicole, I want to get your sort of on the street perspective on this too, but I will flag this on the data extraction where you have Zillow and Redfin. But Zillow in particular, they had acquired a smallish lender many years ago that was kind of teetering around $500 million in transaction volume. In the last 3 years, they've skyrocketed to like $6 or $7 billion. And it's because they're leveraging their scale on the search side to drive more business to the ZHL side. Nicole, Andy and I, we like to get up in the clouds and what's happening at an industry level, right? And all of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt at what's happening and the consolidation, which is real. What's your take on how that's seeping into the streets? How is it actually affecting you, your business, your partners? Are you seeing it yet? Is there a sensitivity?
We're absolutely seeing it. I mean, once somebody is in like kind of the rocket fly trap, if you will, it's really hard for them to even get out. I literally just got off the phone with one of our clients who we've done several transactions with, and through the process of those loans getting sold, they landed at Mr. Cooper, who's now with Rocket, and it's all within now that sphere. So, we're talking about his numbers, and he goes, and also, by the way, I did talk to Rocket yesterday. And I'm like, okay, that's more of the standard conversation now. It's not to say, hey, I've been your client all these years, but also these people who have been servicing my loan, or now that I'm within this sphere, UWM does a phenomenal job at that. Of course, we've already talked about Zillow and their lending arm. I mean, once it's in there, they have IT, they have automation, they have the systems and the follow-up that traditionally a lot of independent LOs, we can talk about relationship, and I can talk all day about trigger leads, but we talk about relationship, but we can't match the technology and the AI unless we work for one of those platforms.
Yeah,
Working for Movement Mortgage, working for any one of the retail options, you can touch it. You can start a subscription with one of the services that might tap you into the follow-up systems or the CRMs or some of the AI, as far as searches go. But really, you're not going to have the full spectrum of beginning to end technology that's capturing that data. So you've got to be ready as a professional to be that much better. Like we have to take this moment to say we can't just be what we were in 2020 and 2021 where we were just alive. We were alive, the phone was ringing, we were capturing opportunities. We have to be very skilled in our conversations and in our strategies and in the answers that we're providing so that we can say, okay, if I already know that you're going to get a call from Bank of America or Wells Fargo or Rocket because of whoever ended up buying your servicing rights. And with the trigger leads, they still have the right to call you and have access to that data. If I know that I'm always going to be up against this one, then I have to know that I'm providing so much more value that I'm capturing that. Or if it's just a rate for rate, the technology is going to win for that. And then streamlining your business so that you're ensuring that that value add and your go to market is so dialed in that you have a unique value proposition that you can present to say, yes, you can go down the rocket train, or we can provide you this very personalized experience. It's going to provide you this strategy and stops along the way. That has to be identified. You have to know who you are in this market as
yeah,
an independent LO. That trigger lead announcement was not necessarily the best announcement, although it was because there's a lot of the calls were exhausting and
yeah.
confusing, but
So
it
I,
doesn't
I
take away the competition.
I heard a couple of things there.
Yeah.
I think the first thing I heard was that whereas if as an LO, a lot of opportunities, you didn't necessarily have an incumbent LO or an incumbent brand. And as these big brands get better and better at being sort of this omnipresent incumbent, that you got to dial your game in to be able to always sort of expect that there's going to be an incumbent with every customer, every prospect that you have. So you really have game, next level of game to go up against what is going to probably be, there's always some form of incumbent there. But the second thing that I heard was that although you don't have the scale as an LO retail on the streets, you can still create your own fly traps so that as they are trying to take your customers, that you're playing an incumbent game on them.
Mhm.
And is that kind of a fair characterization here? Is that the thing that you're seeing now is that you're facing this incumbent status, whether it's UWM or some of these guys, because they're so good at being so sticky.
Yes. Yep.
Um, so
Absolutely. So having that technology, which is one of the reasons why we're here and why I love HomeBot so much, which we'll talk about later, but it is creating who are those partners, and what are the tools that you're accessing as an independent LO, as long as you don't want to go work for one of these other companies that has that fly trap built in, how do you access that in addition to all the other unique value propositions that you bring to the table?
yeah. So as we move off of this subject matter, I do want to just throw one thing out there, and that is and really it recognizes the gravity of what you're saying, Nicole. If you're going to create your own fly trap, and I always like think of that. You all read the book Sun Tzu, Art of War, right? If you're small and they're big, you got to crawl into small places, right? Because they can't go into those spaces. And really, this is just thoughtful, competitive strategy when you're dealing with an army that's bigger than you or a model that's bigger than you, right? What are the things that you can do that are small yet have big impact? And I think that understanding the consumer what I like to call sort of the consumer awakening around this, that they have scale, but they don't necessarily have the personalization. They have scale, but they don't necessarily have the private level of experience, right? Like leaning into doing these unscalable things, like keeping it very private and very personal, is different from what they're doing. Now, AI actually helps the big guys be more private and be more personal, but I guess that's sort of the stepping off point. And I love the way we've leaned into this. It's like these are the ripple effects. These are all the things that are happening. It's happening up here, but it's also trickling down. Nicole, you're seeing it in the field. Let's move on and kind of lean into um, this is sort of the setup for the fly trap. I think there's like yesterday you said some really interesting things, Nicole, around ways that you do create the unique selling proposition. But I want to start out with one aspect of fly trap. Maybe fly trap isn't the best word to describe private search. It's a but it's personalized. It's something that we want to be responsive to what the consumers want. What do they
Yeah.
want? And I just love the quote, I don't want 12 agents calling me, right? And I think this is the thematically what the experience in is that when you're dealing with big public brands, is that you click on a button and your phone starts ringing, right?
Yeah.
Well, and if you're not careful, your phone basically explodes. I mean, this is more or less what we were trying to solve, yeah, Credit Karma by using data to effectively do a one-to-one match so that, it was more match.com rather than, the lending tree model, which we always internally called like Bachelor in Paradise, where you're dating 15 people and they're all going to call you simultaneously and your phone's going to explode. That's not a good experience in any way. It does
Andy, I'm telling you, I went to do a search for insurance a year ago,
yeah.
and now I'm on a 12-month timer with 15 different firms that are texting me the same time every year. And all it does is make me never, ever, ever want to click on that public experience again. It has just been, and I love where you're going with this. You can maybe lean into that a little bit more because we're all consumers, right? We all know what it feels like. I want you to kind of really lean into your experience at Credit Karma and how, like you said, what does that really mean, the Match.com experience?
Well, I mean, the Match.com experience is that like you actually get to know them at a deeply personal level. You have taken the time to look at what their needs and wants and hopes and dreams and fears are, and you do a one-for-one match with like the lender that you thought was going to be the best fit for them,
Right.
rather than simply who paid the most amount of money to get to call them first. And I think like, leaning into your earlier point about like a big national footprint. Well, big national footprints often have lots of IT spend. They can spend a lot of money to like, do these auto dialers and they're going to call you immediately. And so all the top 12 are going to do that. But I think that's a very real opportunity. And actually some of the best people that were on the Credit Karma, mortgage platform because we're basically doing rate table based advertising. The best people were saying like, look, I know you're going to get like 15 calls because there's going to be a trigger lead that goes out based on, on any of these. But let me tell you why we're going to win. And we're going to win because like I know the area that you're living in. We've got like, 15, LOs that have worked that area, that have experience in that. They know the ins and outs of like the specific area of San Francisco or this little neighborhood in San Diego. I mean, there's differences here, and that's how you win, not necessarily through the technology. Although to Nicole's point, you do also have to have like a really good script. You have to have the process in place, and you can't drop the ball, obviously.
So Nicole, on the other side of that, so now you're, whether it's your existing client, your prospect, or you're getting, are you seeing, I mean, are you feeling your client, your prospect exhaustion, or, I mean, are they, are you feeling this dynamic where your new customers are like going, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to have landed, or what are you seeing in this perspective where you can be empathetic to maybe where they've come from or what they're dealing with?
So right now we're in an environment where everybody is exhausted by uncertainty, 100%. And when you're in a constant state of fear or this unknown, then you're put in a position where you simply don't know what to do next. And in fact, making a decision is actually more scary than
Mhm.
just sitting still. So people are sitting still right now. We're seeing that with mortgage purchase application data. We're seeing that with lower existing home sale volume. With everything that we're seeing, we are recognizing the fact that they do have a lot of inventory, especially in the Denver market. We have an abundance of inventory, but buyers, even though they're getting massive seller concessions, they can't make a decision. And it all stems from this current environment that we're in, geopolitical, economic, all of the things, right? So when we're thinking about that, this internet and how easy everything is right here all the time immediately. I
Mhm.
never get a break from it. People have it in their hands or their pockets at all times, and they're constantly looking at a thing, and I'm going to AI it, I'm going to Google it, I'm going to chat it, or whatever they're going to do, and they're looking for that solution. Then all of a sudden, I'm having a conversation. They're like, well, I've spent an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, I've done all these things. And then I talk to people. I've talked to my parents, my sisters, my uncles, my cousins, my next door neighbors, and I've gotten all this data. And now I'm trying to assimilate it. And I'm like, I'm just going to ask you to throw that away for just a minute.
Mhm.
We're just going to actually talk about where you're at. What do you need? How do I help you? And so your journey is an individual journey, yet we are all bombarded immediately, constantly, nonstop, 24/7 by the data and the information. And then on top of that, you pile up, if you do get suckered into putting your name and email or phone number into a thing, now all of a sudden you not only have things that you're going into and that you're searching, you now have things that are coming in. So it is the experience that you are both stepping into and is bombarding you. So at that point, it becomes absolutely walled up. I feel like I understand everything, I know everything, I am incapable of making a decision. Which is why I so love the private search experience to say, look, I'm going to allow you this path to say, go and find out, go and research, go and look without the fear of being bombarded by even more. And then
Yeah.
let me talk to you and actually design the path. You heard this, you heard this, you heard this, but let me actually remove two of the five things because they don't apply. Let me double click on number three because that's absolutely the best solution. And let me tell you why these other two are possible, maybe backups. And now all of a sudden it's like, okay, now if I have clarity, if I have calm, I can, and if I have confidence, and if I don't have confidence currently, I can borrow yours. And if I can borrow your confidence, I can make a decision and I can move forward. And that's
I love
really all
that.
we
I
want for
love that.
consumers right now is an ability to take action.
I love that. It also, in our first part of the webinar series, Neil Dingra actually talked about this too, about how there's this growing chunk of potential buyers that are increasingly stuck in what you just said, being paralyzed and scared by all the information. What's going, is it now? Is it not now? And what they really want is, what they're really asking is, what if? What
Mhm.
if? What if? And what I hear you saying is that you're moving their what if from being this solo experience where it's scary and they're not going to into a safer, less noisy place of what if. But the other thing I heard you saying or sort of extrapolated out of that is that these aren't like people like making the decision is a really scary thing. So if you're, well, we all know this as salespeople too, right? It's like, don't go for the close, right? Be helpful, but it's as important as it's ever been right now, as there's more and more people that are scared of making a decision because of all the data points. And I think that for a segue in terms of where we're going with this is that noise and all of those folks that have never been more uncertain and scared, moving them into a quieter, safer place where they
Mhm.
can, I'm going to use that too, Nicole, where they can, where you can co-op your confidence to them.
I
That's powerful.
I am finding that a lot, and I've actually been talking to a lot of agents about that. I do a lot of agent education every Friday morning. I have a market moves. If anybody watching jumps in, we advertise that on Facebook and Instagram. But I just do 30 minutes of economic information, and I talk about the fact that we have to understand what's happening and the ripple effect of that. If all of these changes, every change that you and Andy are talking about with the technology and the consolidation in the market, we have to understand it because this change, the shift, the speed by which is affecting all of us. We have to level up our game of professionalism and understanding of our industry so that we can communicate in a way that provides our clients a sense of stability. They just want stability and they
Yeah,
want confidence. That's why they do all the information and all the searches. That's why they Google and chat everything. They
yeah,
want confidence. It's not just knowledge. Knowledge is easy. It's the confidence that knowledge provides. So if they can't get there on their own because now they're feeling overwhelmed, we can give them ours because I've
I
got
love
you.
that. I think it's so solid, and I want to pivot off because I think we've leaned into this now, and but I really I want our viewers, listeners to understand. It's like obviously you're not going to go for the kill and ask for the deal. The first step of this is really how do you get your new client, your prospective client, into a safe, confident place where we're reducing the noise. So let's keep
Yes.
on moving here. Um, so, search is only one part of it, right? Search just happens to be a sort of a tried and true consumer behavior that Zillow really popularized. And now everybody searches, right? Everybody dreams. They're a first-time homeowner dreaming about owning a home. They're a homeowner that's thinking about improving their home. They're a homeowner thinking about upsizing or dreaming about downsizing. It's like searches for everybody all the time. And I think this public search experience is, part of our zeitgeist now, right? It's just part of it's what people do. When Saturday Night Live starts to do, spoofs on you, you're like going, oh, you've really made it, right? Because you've become part of that. But what we're talking about today is private search. And this is just one part of, I would say, a strategy is to eliminate noise and give people a safe place. So three things I just kind of want to just flag really quick, get your all's comments. So the this idea of co-branding, I don't want to get too producty on this, but this idea that as a lender, um, that when you're providing any experience to your customer, that you honor the existing relationships that that customer has already developed. And we're calling it co-branding, but it's a form of loyalty from you to that. But ultimately, it's also a way to embrace this privacy, right? That somewhat like we were talking about the dinner party, where there's only people that you're going to set the right people next to the different guests at your dinner party that they're gonna hit it off with, or that they already know, or you know what I'm saying, or a combination of both. I think there's a trust element there, and I think that also in search, obviously the lender wants visibility alongside that agent. I don't know where I'm really going with this, but I just kind of wanted to ask you, both of you guys right now, your thoughts about sort of what do you think the basics are if you're going to provide a private search, this idea of private search to your client? What do you think what boxes do you think are absolutely mandatory to check?
So, I mean, I guess I can jump in and Andy definitely much deeper technology knowledge than I have. But when I'm just looking in, so every agent is going to have their brand search, right? I mean, Keller
Right.
Williams has a search, Coldwell Banker has a search, I can go on and on.
Yeah.
So I can set them up on the portal and I can send them search results. So that's a no-brainer, and that's an absolute yes. That's already happening. What I find would be a one step above that is to say, okay, is there a search? Because there's a reason why people will get that, but then will also go to Zillow or will also go to other search engines because maybe they have different tools that are accessible to them. Maybe they have affordability calculators. Maybe they have different access, or maybe they feel like they might be missing out on some of the product that's out there to choose from. So one of the things that I would want to make sure that we're providing is one is a place where education is available, where I can learn more than just what homes are available, but what do those homes mean to my affordability, to my budget, to my lifestyle, to my goals, right? And then also, is it fully encompassing? Am I feeling like I'm missing out on something? The FOMO is intense right now because
Mm.
there's so many opportunities to get information. I just need to check all the places. And so it's that assurability that all of the data is here. I'm reviewing all the data and I'm capitalizing on not just seeing the data, but then drilling into the accessibility, the affordability, and the metrics of that data as it concerns to me.
Got it. Andy?
Yeah, I would say that when you've got an agent there and they're helping you search, I mean, look at the way that a lot of these tech-powered portals started. Like they started under this premise that, well, maybe there was going to be a world in the future where agents didn't even exist. You're going to go, you're going to find your house online, you're going to press a button, a contractor's going to show up, let you into an open house, or maybe there's an auto lockbox. Some camera is watching you walk through the house. And some startups are still even doing this kind of thing. And I think that what we found, in my time at Redfin was that 99.9% of the time at the very end, you just wanted someone there who was knowledgeable, who had done this before, just to pat you on the back and tell you, hey, you're not screwing this up. You're doing something right. And
Mhm.
to give you that confidence that Nicole was describing. And I would say like in the search process itself, this is an interesting one because it used to be again that prior to MLS listings being online, the agent was the one who brought it to you. It's like, hey, check this out. Like, have you looked at these four homes? Like,
Right.
let's go and meet. And now a lot of the times that the consumers come to the table with the homes already identified. But I do think that there's a very real option here for agents to continue to be a part of that. They can use the same tools that the consumers can to maybe find inventory that the consumer didn't necessarily think they could afford or hadn't considered, or maybe entire new neighborhoods that are similar, and go deeper with like their local expertise and go deeper with their knowledge to get them looking at things. And that's I think kind of what a consumer is looking for. They want to your point, like they're going to go check out all these sites because they think they're missing something. Well,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you can be that person, say, by the way, you maybe didn't even consider this. And not the least of which is like even like an assumable loan, right? Like you can afford a different house at 3.5% than you can at 7% or 6.5%. So there's things that like maybe a consumer hadn't even put into their head that an agent can really guide you to.
And I think the setup on this too is that as much as we message on this webinar today around, and to the extent that our audience is a lender, we're not suggesting that you go out and say, oh, this is a search provided by a lender. I think the point of this is that it does take a village, if you will. It does take the multiple subject matter experts, and we don't think, and I don't think you all think, that agents aren't a part of that. And I think that's just sort of setting the table on that, is that we think that it's not that we're just including it because agents are important. We think that it's vital to create a safe, high confidence space. So let's keep it moving. This is good segue. And one of the things that this is kind of the sort of a this is this is where I start talking about the HomeBot product. And I think this is really important because it's not just about the product, but it's basically philosophically how we're trying to match real life. Okay. So I'm going to set this up for you guys. So building off of that, so the HomeBot search experience, if you're a lender and you have 1,000 clients, it will try to find out the buyer agent of record for every single one of those clients and set it to that agent that we were just talking about, that's the agent that it starts with. And if HomeBot can't find that agent, it'll then say, you know what? For any listing, we're just going to let that client see the listing agent. because we want somebody that they know and or trust or can depend on for getting their questions answered. And then that's the default. Then the next step of it is that let's just say that if you were a lender and you had 1,000 clients, 600 of them were, let's say, auto matched to their buyer agent of record. So you're showing loyalty to those previous agents. But now you've got 400 clients that, for whatever reason, let's say their agents aren't in the business anymore or whatever. We also know, and I think Nicole, you especially have, can speak to this, where you've built a network of partners and real estate agents. And I'll quickly get through this, but I want to hear your comments about this, where when you have those 400 that don't necessarily have this agent of record, that now you have the opportunity to take one of your real estate agent partners and pair them. But the last thing I want to say to this, though, in terms of the way we're approaching this, and I'd love to hear you all tell me why it's good, bad, and different, is that no matter what happens in those first 3 steps on our search platform, ultimately, I do believe strongly that your client, who we call Holly, that's sort of our persona, Holly the homeowner or Holly the home buyer, that she has veto power. That it doesn't really matter who HomeBot put in there as the agent, who the listing agent was, even though, of course, the listing agent's always going to be on there, who Nicole, you felt like was a good opportunity or a good partner for them. But if Holly isn't comfortable, we have to give her the ability to put the agent that she wants to work in with there. Nicole, even if you don't like that agent or you've worked with them before and you don't find them to be up to your professional standards or whatever the case may be. So I just kind of wanted to start with, that's our approach to it in terms of helping every client on our platform have the right agent for them. And I'm curious, Nicole, how you think the nuance of this, of how it works, how it doesn't work, or where the potholes are, if you will.
I do like the fact that their original buyer's agent on the last transaction is automatically tied to them, unless that agent is no longer in the business or not registered in the MLS or what have you. And that any database that I have, I also have who the buyer's agent of record is. And so
Yeah.
for some reason it didn't get married in the technology, I can upload that and I can partner that. And there will be agents, as there are lenders, who are retiring during this period of time. It's been a challenging 3 years that a lot of people have questioned if this is still the industry they want to work in. And if that's the case, then marrying that client with the next best agent, unless that agent then.
Why do you like that? What's in it for you? What's in it for your customer? Why do you like that?
Well, I mean, I think that, okay, backing up. So the opportunity that this presents is to partner the experience with the person who is in closest relationship with that person already. So it
Right.
already feels comfortable. And if I'm in an uncertain market or in uncertain times and uncertain economy, and I
Right.
have a tether to a person who's extremely familiar and is in fact my person when it comes to real estate, all of a sudden now I have a connection into this technology, which can be cold. It's now become part of my tools that I'm now using. It's not the Zillow person who'd bought that zip code. It's not the Redfin agent who is part of the Redfin experience. It is my agent who is now part of a greater technology and is going to be part of my
And
experience.
pardon my interruption. When you say your agent, you're saying you as Holly in that
Me as
scenario.
Holly.
Me as Holly.
Me as
So
Holly.
it's a
Yeah.
safe place. It's good for Holly. And I want to ask you, Nicole, as a loan officer, I get it. You care about Holly, right?
Yeah.
You want her to feel like in a safe place. But from your business perspective, why is that good business for you?
When I can double down and continue to say thank you to the agents, because an agent, say Ann Smith brought me Holly. I
Right.
want to make sure that Ann Smith is continued to be related to Holly unless Holly chooses otherwise, because that is honoring the business relationship that even allowed me to serve Holly. So that continues to be good business and professional business. And that for me to be able to provide a tool that further layers the ability for that relationship to stay intact, I think that that's the best opportunity for a tool that I can
Yeah.
provide to my agents.
So you've always done something in Colorado, and I think that it's just important to call this out. So you were just talking about a situation where you're honoring Ann Smith, who you've worked with and is the agent. But there's another aspect of this, what I think that you're leaning into. Look, you did a bunch of refi business over the last 10 years, right?
Right.
You did an astronomical amount. You actually don't have a relationship with a lot of the agents of record behind those refi deals. They didn't bring you the purchase, they didn't do that. But what I think I heard what you were leaning into a little bit there is that doing right by real estate agents in general in your
Yeah.
community, where you're honoring pre-existing relationships, is a good way to be if you're Nicole Ruth and you're trying to say, I support the industry, I support relationships, I support you. Am I am I reading that correctly?
You are. It's a personal decision, and I know a lot of loan officers can make that decision on their own. I won't undercut or cutthroat anyone. I don't. Well, there's plenty of business. I live in a very abundant space. And so I do honor the relationships because I believe that gives people clarity and confidence to make decisions that when somebody tries to swoop in and overtalk, it just creates more confusion. And ultimately, I want to help people get into homeownership. And if that's the path that gets them into homeownership, if the more people I can impact through that big decision, that's ultimately my goal and why I do what I do.
So let's flip to the other side. So you load your thousand client, you have your thousand clients in. I know you have a lot more than a thousand clients, by the way. So just using it as a round number. And there's 500 that aren't paired. You didn't know who their agent of record was, or they're out of the business or whatever. How do you think about your sort of roster of partners, right? Because you've got, I don't know, can you share with the audience like what's the scale of how many partners you feel like are in your closest concentric circle of
Several hundred.
wow, wow. So by the way, so that actually creates kind of an interesting dilemma for you because you
Yeah.
have several hundred and
Hmm.
you have a very big business. You have several hundred. Um, how do you want to make how do you choose which of those hundreds
Yeah.
are for, let's say, if I'm your customer, for me, in the circumstance where we don't necessarily say have access to who my buyer agent of record was, or they're no longer in the business. How do you make that choice?
I know agents' strengths and I know their locations. So I'm going to be partnering clients based on the best available relationship. Ultimately, I'm looking for, it doesn't have to be the agent that produces the most, but I'm looking for the agent that has the particular skill set. And there are definitely agents that bubble up, from the pool. But I'm really, if I'm looking at tagging somebody, it's probably going to be based on location, empathy, and then a partnership of personality.
Got it. Now, yesterday you asked me a technical question, and just for our listeners, I mean, in talking to Nicole about this, it actually has alerted us to how our technology can actually help Nicole do that at scale. Because if you have a small business and you only have a few agent partners and a few hundred, you could do that manually.
Mhm.
But when you start to get to scale, I think that's where we have an opportunity as a company to help LOs do that at scale using all
Okay.
the thoughtfulness that you just said. Andy, I'm curious if you have opinion about any of this because you were Redfin, you understand agents, you understand lenders, you understand the ecosystem of the relationship uh, between those two. Do you have an opinion about
Oh,
like
I've got
again,
opinions
the
about
potholes
everything,
or
Ernie.
what's
I
that?
always have opinions. No, I mean, I think one thing, I mean, it's worth noting, one thing that this isn't is a big box that shows an agent who's paid the most amount of money to be in that box.
Ah,
So it's worth calling that out because like a lot of like the competition and a lot of like what we're doing here is fighting against that. And we tried a lot of different things at Redfin to sort of do agent matching, all the time, like algorithmic agent matching and people that have done the most amount of deals in that area and people who are so long story short is we tried like everything. What's going to work? What's really going to get it? And it turned out that you mostly just had to show like the top. agents in that area based on like, the transaction volume. And then people would pick by looking at a photo. If it was like a consumer chosen one, they picked someone that basically they felt like they could get along with. Um,
Uh,
and I know that sounds like really strange. You think like, oh, all these characters, we're ranking it on 50 characteristics and we can do all these things with AI. And now it's mostly just people, they pick people they thought they're going to get along with.
the biometrics of looking at that picture and
Exactly, exactly. And I think that if you've got an agent that you've already worked with and you've shown that you can get through like the turmoil of a transaction, because my God, every time like a transaction takes place, it's like a small miracle. I mean, there's so many moving parts, there's so many different people. So if you
yeah.
can find one where there's already like, there was already a marriage of sorts that took place, then you should really run with that. Now, if they don't have one, then yeah, to Nicole's point, yeah, you really should just use your gut judgment on like who do I think they're going to get along with the most? Because again,
Yeah.
like agents have to be like, real estate professionals and know the local area, but a good real estate agent is kind of a therapist more so than anything else. So you're really looking for the therapist for that particular consumer that's like going to be buying a house. Who's going to be
You
open?
said something too that made me think about what Nicole said earlier too about, all these choices and getting them into a private space and a quiet space. It made me think that this is sort of the same thing. It was like, how do you decrease the aperture of all the choices with high fidelity recommendations
Yeah.
about, hey, this is who I think that you should be working with because of
With the
this.
level of like confidence and certainty that it's there. I mean, and
Yeah,
it's super strange how this has all happened. I mean, it used to be that we literally had to fight with, NAR over putting listings online. I mean, that was literally a lawsuit that took place while I was working at, a real estate portal.
right.
And now we're in this world where there's so much information online that actually it's a little bit of overload. And so this is where the human beings kind of come back into play and are able to sort of help guide you and give you confidence. Like, you know what? Actually, here's the areas that you really should be focused in on. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. That doesn't make any sense and isn't of importance.
So let's land the plane on this. I think that, we've kind of been up here, we've talked about these things, and I think it's a really important discussion around quiet, private, and moving our customers and our prospects into a more quiet place. Um, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. And actually, Nicole, and I say me personally, because I don't want to get too product oriented, but I do want to say this. I think that if you're providing a search experience, this private search experience, it has to have the basics, right? It's got to have national coverage. It's got to be an easy to use website that looks and feels a lot like most of the portals. Of course, it has to be branded. But I think that this is where it gets fun. And I'm really curious to hear your all's thoughts on this. But um, HomeBot, we've put in smart filters around payment search, assumables, concessions, buy downs. We've got these calculators in there. I didn't say this earlier, but Zillow has been really, really smart with the way they've used buyability and calculators. Um, if you go listen to their Q4 um, earnings call last year, they were talking about, oh, we finally sort of cracked the code on finding high intent buyers for our home loan business. And it was about calculators. It's just like, duh, right? The guy doesn't walk on the lot unless he wants to buy. The consumer's not playing around with a payment calculator or an affordability calculator unless they have high intent to buy. So they're using that technology. But I just want to make the point, though, that the private search experience, you got to do the basics well,
Mhm.
which are calculators and these filters. But then I do believe that then there's a plus, and the plus are maybe tackling content that isn't for the faint of heart at a portal level. And what I'm talking about is things like concessions buy downs, assumable loans. Nicole, um, a lot of these portals actually don't let you find concessions easily. Their calculators don't do buy downs. Of course, HomeBot does that, but it does that with the thesis that it's going to cause your client to want more information from you on that. Could you start by just kind of leaning into, I'd love to hear your comments about concessions, buy downs. What's happening with, you said something about concessions earlier. What's happening in your book of business? How is it working? And how do you feel, and what are your opinions about how search sort of amplifies that or supports or doesn't support your business that way?
Concessions is such an interesting and unique conversation. Some listings will notate it. They'll notate that the seller is willing to give X, maybe a preferred lender in that environment is also willing to throw in something, and that can buy the rate down to an estimated Y. We are seeing that on a handful of listings in the Denver metro specifically. We do have a significant amount of inventory. I think it's metro specific. There are some metros that are still struggling on their inventory count, and so they're creating more of a buyer. It's still a seller's market, whereas we're really in a buyer's market. So some sellers are going and doing that, but others, it's more of a conversation. It's more to say, how long has a particular listing been on the market? How handy are you to find a home that is not fully prepped, or maybe the seller doesn't want to do any work on it? I'm having some really in-depth conversations, asking my clients questions about what are they willing to take on? What are they willing to give up in order to maybe get a particular listing that might give them massive opportunities to get seller concessions towards rate buy downs and lock something in the low fives that could massively change the affordability of that.
Mhm.
So to maybe even see, if a concession is provided on a tool, it might just simply be, well, if I was able to get 1% in concessions or $15,000 in concessions, what might that equate to in a rate reduction? I mean, while that would certainly be helpful, a lot of that is somewhat lender specific. And it's a conversation I'm having it on almost every
So that
transaction
is so
because of my work.
fascinating because I mean, what you're really saying is like you're not at the end of the side. In other words, like you have just now positioned yourself as a lender at the front end of the buy, right? You're saying, hey, you need to think differently about the criteria of the homes that make your short list because if you do X, I can help you do Y on the back end as it relates to getting your rate down and creating affordability, which interestingly enough sort of comes full circle and says, if you can do buy down, you can actually afford more house. So it actually is sort of this recursive thing. It actually changes how much maybe they can afford. But what I really love about what you just said is that you're putting yourself at the top of the waterfall for the buyer process, as
Mhm.
opposed to just hanging out at the back end. Did I hear that right?
I suggest the concessions versus wait to be told the concessions.
Ah, got it. Got it. Got it. How
Yeah.
much of I'm curious, how much of your business involves buy downs over the last 12 months?
Specifically right now, probably 70%, but I
Holy
would
smokes.
say that would average a little lower, maybe 55 over the last 12
I
months.
mean, that's massive. I mean,
Yeah.
I would just, I'm going to throw this out. And actually, Andy, I'd love to hear your comment. And I know we're going to talk assumables, but why in the world are the portals not leaning in to concessions and buy downs as a form of content? Geez, Nicole Ruth, over half her business involves concessions and buy downs, but yet the portals feel relatively tone deaf to that action.
I mean, concessions are something that's unique to that particular individual, who's
Mhm.
selling their home. And it's not something that can be easily aggregated and syndicated at a national level at a scale that these portals operate at.
Yeah,
So this is something that's uniquely available to locals, through a private search experience like this. Um,
interesting.
I,
Yeah.
I think you might be able to pull it off, but I think that's fundamentally the problem. Now,
I
you
I I
also,
I think they're going to copy us eventually because you can't ignore what Nicole just said, right?
yeah.
It's over half our business. And so to the degree that the technology that we as professionals use are being front and center around the education around concessions and buy downs.
Yeah.
And then the sort of the double whammy of, oh yeah, get you started on that subject matter. Actually talk to Nicole and she's really going to pull that string to help you understand how to really leverage that for your next home. I think that feels like a winning playbook.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the other thing is like, we talk buy downs, we talk about concessions, but like, there are just those deals. I'm going to push on the assumables. I mean, that's my
I know
space.
I'm setting you up. You felt it coming. You felt
I
it
felt
coming.
well, I could feel, but like, that 70% number is also an interesting one because like a full 70% as of last month of all the outstanding mortgages had a rate that was better than 5%. So assumable loans, if you're really truly looking for the path of affordability and you can find something that's in your area, then finding a home that has an assumable loan is like is an absolute steal. Um,
You're suggesting there's there actually is a hot tub time machine. It exists to take you back 2 or 3 years to be able to get 3 and 4% mortgages.
I get in the hot tub time machine every single night before I go to bed. And no, I mean these things are crazy. That's like 25% of all the homes on the market have right now have an assumable loan on them, and they're functionally invisible. But that this is a very real way for, for agents and for lenders even to help guide consumers to maybe finding a house they hadn't even considered or finding more house for the same amount of money. And we talk about rate buy downs. It's like, great, you just spend a percentage point to get, an eighth off your mortgage, but you could spend significantly less, go find an assumable loan and get yourself like a 3.5% loan. I mean, those things are out there still. Uh,
But again, it kind of comes back to the same thing. It's like, oh my gosh, the portals, this is affordability that's hiding in plain sight
yeah,
that public search is not giving consumers access to. We love it because I think to your point, you got one out of four homes on the market have assumable loans that are less. But I have a funny feeling that Nicole on the street is like going to throw or try to throw some water on this. So Nicole,
Yeah.
assumable loans. I've heard lenders kind of get a little squeamish on assumable loans because you can't make money. It's hard to close the deal. What's your personal take on assumables?
Yes, to all those things, right? It is absolutely, I'm an investor, right? So I believe in the opportunities that real estate gives you. And if you could walk into an assumable loan, and we are seeing those, especially in pockets, right? Colorado Springs, highly, it's, around all the bases. So you're going to have a lot of VA loans. I walk into a situation saying, I'm absolutely comfortable from an abundance mindset that I need to give you all of the options. And should you choose an assumable loan, it does cut most lenders out because you have to work with the servicer. Now, there are some lenders who have gone into creating a business model around helping manage the experience with the servicer and or leveraging or making available the gap financing.
yeah.
But if you can overcome the veteran who is going to be tied to that eligibility if he sells to a non-veteran, I believe that is something that is not educated enough on. I think we need to educate our sellers on the risk as a veteran using giving an assumable loan as a seller. I think as a buyer, understanding the lower interest rate plus the mortgage insurance, you've got to look at that. And then can you obtain or do you already have the gap financing? But if you have somebody that can educate you on all of that, it is by far a way to step into something that creates affordability. It just has to be with eyes wide open. So often people want to sell the next shiny penny. And I'm like, stop selling shiny pennies and sell an opportunity and a strategy that creates a pathway. And if that's the manner by which you do it, I'm all in.
So well, here's what I heard when you said that, and this is where again, thematically it fits with quieting the noise, be an advisor, but concessions, buy downs, assumables, you're educating people about these things, and so where I was kind of baiting you with oh, you're not going to make any money because assumable loans don't pay much and they're hard to close. You flipped this. You flipped the script on me immediately. You're like going, I don't care about that. I care about quieting, showing customers, giving them strategies. If it works out to be an assumable loan, great. If it works out to be a buy down, great. If it works out to be neither, great. You're the one that's quieting things, being the strategist, and putting all of the basically you want you want to be that person to have all of these conversations,
Yeah.
whether or not it is a straight line to your bottom line.
People look at conversion rates and they want to go, I talked to 100 people and I converted 60% of those into 30 applications and 25 closings or whatever that number is. I want to talk to 100 people and I want to create a strategy for them. And if they use me, that's fantastic. And if they don't use me, then they feel more confident in the decision that they've made. So interestingly enough, I know this goes against the grain. I don't care about conversion rates. I care about people's experiences. And I think assumable loans are a fantastic opportunity. I just think they come with burdens, and burdens just need to be explored, especially for the veteran who's selling and for the person who needs to solve for the gap financing. But if you can overcome those and you know what that experience is, my gosh, especially investors. I work with a ton of investors and they are finding deals that cash flow in an environment that doesn't right now.
I
Yeah.
know we're going to run short on time today, and I'm just going to say it right now, Andy, and I want all of our listeners to hear this too. You know, Building off of what Nicole said, I think that the first thing is you have to be invested in understanding this subject matter. And
Yeah.
Andy, with retro rate, like just hearing you speak long form, your blog posts, your content, and I'm to say everybody that's listening to this, hearing this, you want to learn soup to nuts about assumable loans and all the nitty gritty on this, you got to follow Andy. You got to reach out to Andy. We're going to flash something here at the end. There's so much to unpack here around assumables and how you can become someone that makes it feel less scary. Andy, I'm going to give you just a minute to just flag on this a little bit more, but I really want our viewers to lean in and to use you as their influencer on this subject matter.
And Andy, somebody did ask in the comments if assumables are good for investors. So if in your conversation you
Yeah,
want to
they're
throw in that.
fantastic for investors. No, I mean, if
Yeah.
you basically what people don't realize is that all VA loans are assumable by non-veterans, and they're also assumable by investors. So you can if you can find a house that's at 2.5 to 3.5, 4%. I mean, you're basically going to be able to charge the same rent, but your cost of capital is significantly less than everyone else. That's pure margin that you're going to be taking home each and every day. It's also potentially even a better situation because it doesn't necessarily conflate things like what was the paint color and do I imagine myself in this home. It's like, no, it's purely a financial decision. It's maybe even easier than a standard transaction. So I would 100% say that if you're an investor and you're looking in particular areas, you should consider that in a heartbeat.
Andy, I am going to hit you for just a data point. 1 out of 4 loans. What's the average rate of assumables right now?
Well, the average, if you look at like what the distribution is, like 70% of all outstanding mortgages have a rate that's like less than 5%.
Jeez, jeez. It takes a lot of points to buy down to 5%,
It's
to your
expensive, yes.
to your point. And I just love it. Again, listening to Nicole talk about it's like when you have the mindset of that experience that you're providing, you get to positive outcomes by taking um, the approach of educating, quieting the experience. I know we're out of time. I feel like that we could go for another couple of hours, but I really want to encourage everybody listening, reach out to Andy about assumables. Nicole, you're a thought leader in the entire industry. I encourage people to follow your content, listen to you, what you're doing with agents, how you think about your clients, and the way that you're educating them. And HomeBot, we're just one tool. You can see that this is just about using search in this larger context of your business, and how we want to be a part of this story. We want to be a part of Nicole's success going forward to help her go to market with providing a safe, quiet, informative, educational experience for her customers. So I just want to thank everybody today. Andy, thank you. Nicole, thank you guys so much. I learned some today. I know our viewers have learned something too. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us. This is fantastic.
You
Agreed.
bet.
Bye-bye.
See everybody.